Before it became a shattered icon of the past, the Colosseum stood at the heart of a living city. A city loud with voices, ambition, fear, and spectacle. To understand Rome's power, we must walk its streets as they once were, before stone became ruined. Rome before ruin was not a monument, but a system in motion. By the 1st century CE, more than 1 million people moved through its narrow streets each day. Carts rattled over stone roads, vendors shouted prices. Animals were driven toward markets, and smoke from workshops mixed with the smell of bread, oil, and refuse. Water flowed constantly from aqueduct-fed fountains, while crowds gathered at bathhouses, temples, and public squares. Buildings rose tightly together, several stories high, blocking light and trapping noise. The city functioned almost without pause, governed by schedules of labor, worship, and entertainment. At ground level, Rome felt dense and relentless, place shaped by human movement rather than silence or symmetry. The Colosseum was not an isolated landmark, but an active engine of the city. Completed in 80 CE under Emperor Titus, it was designed to move tens of thousands of people with precision. Spectators arrived early, guided by numbered arches that directed them to assigned seating based on class and status. Officials monitored entrances, guards maintained order, and vendors sold food and drink outside the perimeter. Inside, complex systems of corridors, staircases, and elevators coordinated crowds above and animals and fighters below. The structure imposed discipline through architecture, shaping behavior before any spectacle began. Long before the game started, the Colosseum was already performing its function. Inside the Colosseum, Roman society arranged itself in stone. Seating followed strict legal codes, reinforced by imperial authority. Senators occupied the lowest rows, closest to the arena floor. Behind them sat equestrians, followed by ordinary male citizens. Women, the poor, and enslaved people were pushed higher, sometimes standing, sometimes separated entirely. This order was not symbolic, it was enforced. Ushers and guards ensured no one crossed boundaries. From any seat, spectators could see where they belonged. The arena did more than host events. It displayed hierarchy in full view, turning social rank into a public, unquestioned fact experienced collectively by tens of thousands at once. For Romans, the games were not mindless cruelty but a sanctioned public ritual. Gladiatorial combat had roots in funeral rites of the Republic, where bloodshed honored the dead and affirmed social values. By the imperial era, events in the Colosseum combined religion, discipline, and mass entertainment. Fighters swore an oath to endure suffering, reinforcing ideals of courage and endurance admired by Roman culture. Animal hunts displayed human dominance over nature, often using exotic beasts brought from across the empire. Death was visible, expected, and regulated by officials and priests. The crowd's reaction mattered, but final authority rested with magistrates and emperors. These spectacles reflected Rome's beliefs about power, order, and the meaning of public life. Beyond the arena, Rome continued at full pace. Surrounding streets were lined with taverns, bakeries, brothels, and shops, selling oil, cloth, and cooked food. Many residents lived in insulae, crowded apartment buildings that rose several stories high and were prone to fire and collapse. Public latrines and bath complexes served thousands daily, functioning as social spaces as much as necessities. Markets, such as the Forum Romanum, remained centers of trade, legal business, and political life. Religious rituals occurred constantly, with temples drawing worshippers throughout the day. Ordinary routines unfolded beside imperial spectacle, revealing a city where daily survival and public entertainment existed side by side. Imperial power was never separate from the arena. The Colosseum itself was commissioned by Emperor Vespasian and inaugurated in 80 CE by his son Titus, using public games to secure loyalty after years of civil war. Admission was free, and food was sometimes distributed, reinforcing the idea that the emperor was a provider. The scale of the spectacles demonstrated the state's ability to command resources, labor, and distant provinces. Victories, executions, and pardons were all staged before the public eye. Through carefully managed entertainment, emperors shaped public opinion, reinforced authority, and reminded Rome's population who controlled both pleasure and punishment. The spectacle depended on an unseen system of cost and supply. Gladiators were trained in state-run schools such as the Ludus Magnus, where strict discipline protected valuable human assets rather than expendable lives. Most fighters were enslaved, prisoners of war, or condemned criminals, though some volunteers sought income or status. Animals arrived from across the empire, including North Africa and the Near East, captured through organized hunts that disrupted local ecosystems. Maintaining the games required constant investment in transport, training, housing, and medical care. Beneath the stone and ceremony lay an economy built on coercion, logistics, and imperial reach, revealing how deeply violence was integrated into Rome's administrative system. By the late 3rd and 4th centuries CE, the rhythm of the games began to change. Economic pressure, political instability, and shifting values reduced their scale and frequency. Imperial funding became inconsistent as resources were redirected toward defense and administration. At the same time, the spread of Christianity introduced moral opposition to gladiatorial combat, which several emperors gradually restricted. In 404 CE, Emperor Honorius formally banned gladiator fights, though animal hunts continued for some time. The Colosseum remained standing, but its purpose faded. What had once been a center of civic life slowly lost its function, signaling not a sudden collapse, but a long transformation in how Rome defined power and public order. Today, the Colosseum stands silent, its crowds reduced to memory. Stone that once enforced hierarchy and spectacle now frames questions rather than commands obedience. Earthquakes, spoliation, and time stripped it of function, but not meaning. What survives is not the roar of the crowd, but the evidence of how power was organized and displayed. Rome did not fall in a single moment, and neither did its values disappear overnight. The Colosseum's ruin marks a shift from lived experience to historical reflection. It reminds us that civilizations are defined not only by what they build, but by how long those structures continue to shape human thought after their purpose has ended.